Okay, we are live on LinkedIn. So, hey, Bret, good morning.
Good morning, Kelly. How are you?
I'm good. Let's give it a couple minutes and make sure we are streaming. I'm going to go look and see how that's going. If I can tell on my in my activity, hopefully. Yeah, it says we're live right now. There we are. And I'm going to post the oh, I can't do it right now. I'll have to do it after the handout for today.
Okay.
So the and today is our third conversation, so that's exciting.
Yeah, I think it's
Three,
quite a milestone, actually.
yeah,
That doesn't
yeah.
seem like that big of a deal, but you look back and you reflect and you say, "Oh my goodness, there's three of these in the book." Or, well, this will be the third one after today, but three of these in the book.
Well, and since the first book was over 500 pages, I think that is an accomplishment.
No hill for a stepper, as they say.
Maybe we scared some people off. I don't know.
Yeah.
But as people join, I hope you'll greet us and say hello. And we also are recording this. So if you're watching it later on the recording, we're happy to have you with us as well. So, in the past couple of these, Bret and I could talk for hours about any of the books. We're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. So I have my trusty timer right here. So we'll keep our eye out, but we're going to go with a pretty quick clip just to make sure. So as people join, please sign in and let us know, post a greeting in the chat, and we'll know. Otherwise, we can't tell who is on watching us through this platform. And today's conversation is about The Long Game by Dorie Clark. Here is what the book looks like. Dorie Clark, and we will get to that in just a minute. Let's do quick introductions first. So, Bret, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Bret Getzel. For those on the broadcast today, I came to know Kelly through our relationship when I was in business school, and she was actually one of my professors. And through that relationship, we talked extensively about my passion, I guess, for reading. And one thing begat another. And Kelly said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a leadership conversation on several of the books that I've read?" And what it's really done for me is it keeps me disciplined and make sure that I read. So I can't say that I'm reading and then obviously whiff or pass on a month. But and I'm a professional as far as what I do. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we get into our conversation today.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to hear what your update is for everyone, too, if you're going to share that.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. And I'm Kelly Byrnes with Voyage Consulting Group, and we do consult on this topic of leadership development, specifically at the senior and executive levels. And I serve as an executive coach, and my sweet spot is company culture. So I work with leaders that want to have influence over the broader organization. So it's exciting to delve into these kind of personal development books for leaders. And then Bret and I talked about our next phase will be, right now we're in leading self. Then we'll also pick some books about leading others, and then some others related to leading a business. And then we'll just rotate through those three kinds of topics. So the purpose of these sessions is to get to the heart of what matters to a leader in an organization and how they can build their kind of their personal influence, really, and then the foundation of that, so they are able to lead their cultures and companies with success. So we don't intend these to be a book review or a book report. So people are welcome to join whether they read the book or not, and you're not expected. Like, we've done them on lives because people can join kind of anonymously, and you're not obligated to do a book report kind of thing. Bret, thoughts on our foundation of this, or our mission
No, I think
statement?
we'll cover a little bit more here. We got, our why here. We'll define that. So,
Yeah.
And I think you talked a little bit about this is our third conversation. That let's review real quickly. I won't go through them, but we started out with Dr. Cialdini's Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, and that was our first broadcast. And then we did Gary Keller's the one big thing last month. And there's common themes throughout these, and Kelly and I did in our pregame, and we connect quite a bit through the month as far as what we're going to talk about and what she's finding value in and what I'm finding value in. But other than the books that are original research, there are some common themes to them. And what I find as I read them is each author reads every other author, so they'll cross-reference one author, and so as I said, there are some commonalities. But as I mentioned, we connect frequently through the month as we're working on our content, and we're kind of looking at that purpose. And I'm sure some of you have read Simon Sinek, What's Your Why? And so the genesis of kind of our interests is we received from the students in the business class that said, hey, I want to read. And it's this idea of continuing your personal development after college and after business school. And, it's kind of like the what's next, the now what. You hear that used a lot in business speak as well. Now what? So when they finished their business school, they said, hey, I want to read. I want to invest in myself, but they're just not sure what to read, what books, what topics. And so that's really kind of the purpose of what we're doing here, is saying, hey, we've read a lot of these books and we continue to read frequently. And hey, this was one of the books that I read, and it happened to really resonate and have value. So that was kind of what we started with the book club, is just saying, hey, these are books that we've read, and you can kind of read these, what I call it a low risk investment, because somebody else has kind of already proofed them for you, if you want to think of it that way. So, I can illustrate it to you this way. I spoke at a venture capital class in December, and I always leave my contact information, as every speaker does. And I got a couple of emails from people that were in the class, and they both said the same thing. Hey, I'm committing to reading books in 2022. What do you recommend? And they both said the same thing. Hey, I'm a young graduate, really not well established in the professional world. So given where I'm at in my journey, what titles do you recommend? And so I responded back to both of them. But what I found interesting was the application of the principles from some of the other books that we've read, in that they put it on paper, they wrote it down, and they committed. And that's several of the principles that you find in goal planning and commitment. And it was just kind of interesting how that all played out. So that was kind of what drives this thing. So you say, hey, what's your why? And it's to expose people to titles and books that, are going to be contributory in their own personal development. So, as we've taken this journey together, we're kind of committed to demonstrating how these principles have played out in our lives. Kelly and I are both, not at the beginning of our journey by any stretch, certainly not at the end of it. But, I worked for a Fortune 500 company. Kelly did consulting. We've got a ton of personal illustrations and personal applications where the concepts and principles that are in the book are being applied in our life. And that's really what we're trying to personify, is here's the concepts in the book, and this is how we're applying them in our own life. You want to add anything to that, Kelly?
Yeah, I just want to point out that we don't recommend every book that we read. So for the few that we do a discussion about, we're not just picking books at the beginning of the year and then we're set on those, because we want two things. So we're not recommending every book that we read to everyone. So we are selective in our process. And then we want to read books that are current. So we have, and then if there are classics, we're going to recommend those too. But we want our people that are joining us to be on the cutting edge of leadership, and to be learning contemporary leadership principles and models and ideas. So, but some of the stalwarts are good too, some of the foundational ones. And you mentioned a couple of them. We've talked extensively, I think every month, about 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that's been a foundational book to so many for 30-something years. But then you also mentioned Good to Great as another good one. And what was the other one? Do you remember? You mentioned a third one in your...
Well, I just read, from the last broadcast of this one, I just read Stephen Covey's son, Stephen M.R. Covey, The Speed to Trust. And I also, I don't know if we're going to cover John Maxwell's 21 Irrefutable Laws at some point in the future, but those are, like you said, those are the stalwarts, the classics. You really can't have a business conversation without somebody making a reference to one of those titles.
Yeah, exactly. And that's good for people to know what those references relate to. So it is a great idea to read those. And I don't know if we talked about that, I'm certified in the 7 Habits and the Speed of Trust as well. So I facilitated those both in many organizations too, or in several organizations. So big fans of all of those, big fans of Covey. So should we dive into Dory's?
Well, let's real quick here. I'll give you this personal update, because I know we're kind of sharing our
thank you.
So, I think for the folks that were on the broadcast last month, you know that I was with this Fortune 500 company, and here I am, 53 years old, about to turn 54 this year, and found myself in that classic dilemma. Got that call, hey, we're going to go in another direction. No harm, no foul. Did a great job. Appreciate all your contributions to the company over 20 years, but we're going to pivot. And in my life, I can't tell you how many friends and associates that I've been with or know that have had that same exact thing happen. And I think everybody always says, hey, it'll never happen to me. Well, never is really kind of a bad way to look at things. So anyway, long story short, I was in that situation, and good to report, happy to report, glad to report. Here we are in January, and I've signed on with a small, what I call an early stage food processing company in the Kansas City market. And all of the things that we talk about, culture, leadership, change management, strategic planning, all of those things are just coming full circle right here in a big way for me. So about the time you think that there's no reason to learn or no reason to sharpen your edge, all those great cliches, here I find myself almost taking a step back to where I was 30 years ago, working in a manufacturing facility and training line workers and setting strategic plans and working on cash flow analysis. And it's been quite invigorating. It's challenging. The days are very, very long, and the team obviously is relatively thin because it's a small, early stage company, as I said. So you find yourself wearing many hats. But I wanted to find something for myself that really got me excited and enthused to get out of bed in the morning and go make a difference. And I really have found that. So I'm sure as we go through each of the monthly book reviews, I'll share some things with you about what's happening and how I'm applying these concepts. But one of the points I wanted to make, I'm reading Liz Wiseman's Impact Players. And I was reading chapter 2, which basically says impact players do what needs done. And the gentleman that I partnered with here literally called me and he says, hey, you've kind of stepped back from your soft, cushy corporate job, and you're going to just have to do what needs to get done. And he hadn't read the book. And I went home and I read that chapter that night. And I brought the book in the next day, and I sat it down in his desk, and I said, look right here. This is exactly what you said yesterday. And it's funny how sometimes those things just happen in the moment. All you can do is just step back and say, hey, I think I've heard that someplace before. And sure enough, I have. So anyway, that's the update on me. And, I'm very excited to give everybody a good progress report there.
I love that. And how funny the coincidence of the timing of that. But I'm so grateful that you'll be our case study all year. And, to go from a new job and a new type of organization. And it'll be fun to see your progress and challenges and changes as we tackle these books throughout the year. So,
yep, I'm right there with you. So you kind of teed it up. Let's dive in. So the book for this month is The Long Game. Kelly was kind enough to show you that. Whenever I grab a book, I always like to frame the perspective of the author. Some of them came from academia, some of them are consultants, some of them are authors, speakers, others, come from commercial business. Liz Wiseman came from Oracle, got a tremendous amount of experience. I think she was the VP of personal development and training throughout the entire Oracle organization. So she's got a great lens of which to be able to do things. Jim Collins, I guess it was, who did Good to Great, really a researcher is what he was. And then Dory, our author today, I looked her up online, and she's a teacher, the Duke School, the Fuqua School at Duke University, and then also teaches at Columbia. So, if you track rankings for business schools, those are two dandies right there. So obviously she's very well established there, keynote speaker, and wrote 4 books. I don't know that I would call that a prolific author, but got 4 of them, and several of them made the New York Times bestseller list. So The Long Game is what we're working on right now, but that's basically Dory's background. So,
and she's written hundreds of articles in Harvard Business Review as well. Hundreds, not just a few, but hundreds of them.
Yep.
And very well connected with, as a coach, she's an executive coach too. So well connected in business in that regard too. So, okay, so we're going to do something different. We're going to, instead of going through the whole book like we've done before, Bret and I both just picked out our top favorite tips or our key takeaways. So, Bret, I'll let you lead the way, and I'll just chime in as we go.
Yeah, sure. So the 2 that I landed, and I kind of combined them.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Hers were she called Dory, the author, called them the real reasons we're all so busy and saying no, even to good things. That was kind of her
That was
first two
huge to
points,
me.
and I thought they were tremendous. So, her point she makes, she says, of course you're busy, but studies show that looking busy can also be a way of increasing your social status. It's almost something innate in each one of us that if we're not busy, we don't feel like we're important, which is, I think it's human nature to feel that way, but we really kind of have to step back from that. So, and sometimes we're unconsciously doing this to ourselves, bringing on our own personal stress. So, and she makes the comment about whether or not you need to do that early in your career to become established and gain credibility. But as you mature and go down your professional journey, you may be able to kind of meter that back a little bit. So again, we always want to illustrate how I see these things playing out in our lives. And I was a leader of several regionals when I led a sales team in my previous job. And my regionals would give me their plans, their activities, what they were doing. And inevitably, our team got called on to do training. In training in our world, typically, you were usually commanded a room, you had a stage, bright lights, a microphone, the whole thing. And who doesn't want to be on the stage? If you ever follow, musicians and people like that, they tour forever because of the adrenaline rush they getting being on the stage. And so I started to ask my team, I said, at the end of your training event, I said, is there a PO behind that? Well, no. And I said, well, what are our KPIs, right? Our KPIs are sales, and which can be volume, can be dollars, margins, whatever measure you want to use. But the bottom line was we found ourselves investing in these training events. And at the end of the day, we really couldn't monetize or detail any benefit from doing that. But yet we continue to do it again and again and again. And the team would say, well, I'm investing in, I'm investing in these people that I'm training. Yeah, I get that. But, are those truly the decision makers and the gatekeepers that can impact your results? And the more and more we went through this cycle again and again and again, the regionals that reported me, my direct reports, they finally got to the point where they just started to decline these opportunities. And they just said, I'm just not seeing the downstream benefit of this. And it kind of personifies what Dory was talking about, why we're so busy and the difficulty that we all have in saying no.
Yeah. Such a great point on two things there. One is that she makes is saying no to things that you would like to do, and the invitations to speak for really cool organizations, but they don't have the fee, or sometimes conferences want you to speak, but you pay your way there, pay for the attendance, and there's no fee, but it's for exposure.
Exactly.
Well, I'd love to help someone, and that sounds great, but it takes a lot of time. And the opportunity cost of that can be greater than what people think sometimes. The other one that came to mind to me in that regard in Dory's book was, I've written about let others win the competition of the miserable. So the competition to be so booked and so busy, and my weekends are jam packed, and I need a break from my weekends. And I hear people speak like that, and let them win that. Let them win that competition of the miserable instead of trying to one up by being overbooked and overstressed all the time. And then she does call out the ego of all of that too. So that's a good reminder, a good check. So yeah, that was a good one. Okay, those were two combined. What's your next one?
Well, the other thing, and I could talk about this one for literally hours, this idea of setting goals. And the way she illustrates it, she says, what kinds of person do I want to be? Identify experiences that will help you grow into that. And then she continues, how can I think bigger? Don't be constrained by what's possible now. Think about where you'd like to be in the future. And again, I always think about what we're taught in undergrad school, what we're taught in business school. And I almost think the goal setting process is it's table stakes. It's taken for granted. And at least in my coursework, I didn't have a class that had strategic thinking and strategic planning. And I think that's kind of where this topic would fit. But like I said, I'm so passionate about goals because I believe in living purposely and living intentionally. And so I just wanted to unpackage in our conversation here real quickly what that goal planning process looks like. So, you set the goal, and every author will talk about dreaming big and shoot for the moon. You can frame it however you like, but it's a difference between what I call a stretch goal and a goal that's easily accomplished. I'd rather have a stretch goal and come up short than have a goal with a low hurdle or a low bar and achieve it every time, because I will have accomplished a lot less. So the first thing is establishing the goal. And, we talk about goals and objectives. They're kind of the same thing. I mean, whether you use that ghost process or not. But the bottom line is goals and objectives. And then we use that acronym of SMART objectives. And there's kind of my homework assignment for everybody is I'm not going to go into what a SMART objective is, but if you're listening and you're curious, Google it, because there's a ton of information out there on that. And really, I think it's valuable. I'm working with my 22-year-old daughter on being intentional, and Kelly and I in our pregame started talking about pillars, the personal, the professional, the physical, the spiritual, and physical, financial. Financial is the other one, the 5. And I'm working with my daughter on this process of how you live your life intentionally. You set the goal, you develop the plan, you evaluate the results, you course correct, and you keep moving forward, and you just rinse and repeat. And it's amazing. She's got a undergraduate degree from a good college. She hasn't done her business school work yet, but this idea of being intentional and that planning process, I think, is so important. And Clark does a little bit about that. And again, when Kelly and I were doing our pregame, I said, our audience, we're taking it from the lens that everybody knows what we know, has read the same books that we've read, had the same, I'm trying to think of the word, consulting opportunities, but seminars, that's the word, seminars.
Yeah.
And we all haven't done, everybody in our call hasn't done those things. So I'm kind of stepping back to say, hey, before we can move forward, let's all assure ourselves that we all understand the importance of that planning process. And I think Clark does a pretty good job on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like her take is an addition to what we talked about last month with the one thing, which is all about goal setting. Her takes, she spent more time on like the person that you want to be and what experiences will contribute to that, and doing more than just head down, focused only on your work. I've created this little booklet. I don't know if everyone can see. My Plan to Live a Fulfilling Life. And this walks through several different questions and thought-provoking ideas and concepts, and including the 100 things list, which I had to do in 6th grade and have kept it up ever since. So it's all of that's included. And anybody who watches this, if you'd like a copy email, just send me a note. You can DM me on LinkedIn or send me an email, and I'll send it to you for free, of course. And you're welcome to get yourself started. And it includes a recommendation to pick 3 goals for yourself, and it asks you these specific questions about it that tie into some of what Dory talked about as well. So yeah, big fan of the goal setting and choosing and living with intention and aligning your behaviors, your choices, and your decisions with who you are as a person. So,
well, it speaks to the class that you teach at Rockhurst, the SCM. Yeah. I mean, and when I took the course, I said to everybody in the class, I said, people pay thousands and thousands of dollars to work with career coaches that will really walk you through this. And Rockhurst requires that as a core class within the business school program. So it's priceless.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay. What's your third one?
My third one, and this one, everybody that knows me or has listened to me knows how fond I am of networking. And I preach this. I just think it's so important to continue to stretch your sphere of influence. So, what she calls it is the right people, the right room. And, it's just a way, and she's got a way of categorizing networking for short-term, long-term, and then what she calls infinite horizon. But, short-term are people basically that you can call up for a recommendation, a reference, or referral. In my case, maybe a PO or an order or something of that nature. She does go into a little bit about the aspect of reciprocity, which should sound familiar from those of you who were with Dr. Cialdini's book as well, the psychology piece. But, when we look at this one, we just really, and I've emphasized in the past how people can naturally get into this rut of, hey, you know what? I've got these people at home that are my family. I've got a pretty intimate friend group, and then I've got my peer group at work. And over a period of time, you will have absorbed virtually all of the knowledge that group has to give. And you say to yourself, well, now, if I don't extend my network, if I don't expand my sphere of influence, I'm basically limited out, and you'll find yourself getting stale. And I reflected back on I think it was 3.5 years in my MBA coursework, why that was such an exciting and invigorating and exhilarating period, because I was around, different thinkers, people that were like-minded, driven, up and coming professionals. And then I started to reflect and say, why does so much new thinking and technology come out of university settings. That's a natural incubator for progressive thinking, which is a funny way of saying networking. So, as we're looking at the themes in the book that really resonated, this idea of networking is just so important. And I think everybody's probably heard it more than once. And it seems to be more difficult for people than what I would think. And I'm sure for some people, it just simply comes natural. But for others, they probably have to be a little more intentional and more deliberate about it.
Mm-hmm. And Dory shares scripts in the book, which I really appreciated. And she shares scripts for different types of scenarios and different situations. So I think that'll be helpful to people, along with some specific tips like don't connect with someone and ask for something right away. She says, give it a year. You have to give it a year so you're really connected before you ask for something. To go from stranger to asking for something is not good. So all those LinkedIn sales pitches that we get that are not good models of what she's talking about. And the whole point of the book is to think long term, not to think about your immediate, or not think about this, but to spend deliberate time thinking about where you see yourself in the future, what you need, what you can contribute, and looking at that. One of my other ones, we don't have a lot of time to go into it, but additional one is how she talks about think in waves. So instead of thinking about short term or what will accomplish the goal right now, thinking longer term and different stages of what you might need for different projects and different things you're learning even. So different things that you're up to. So
let's just talk. We have just a couple of minutes left. So, if I'm a listener right now and I'm saying, hey, I like this idea of the long game, the book, either I've read it or I'm going to go out and get it, read it. I think Kelly and I are aligned in this. I'm not advocating that everything in the book is meaningful, and I think I always find that to be the case.
Yeah.
And typically when I'm reading, you'll see my book here. I've got the little dog ears on, and I use these little Post-it notes. And usually when I'm done with the book, I put it back in my bookshelf, and it goes in the bookshelf with these little Post-it notes. And this one's got about 10, I think, in here, which is a long-winded way of saying, hey, the 10 pieces of information, the 10 really big nuggets are all dog-eared that way. And that's typically how I do it. So, 250 some pages, I think, in the book, and I got, 10 nuggets out of that book. So there are things in the book, like I said, that I read, and I think, well, I don't know that I can apply that. So just kind of food for thought, if you will.
Yeah. And I just counted up mine, and I had 15. I use the very back of the book, and I take notes on the back of most of my books. So, so every single thing that every author says doesn't apply to everybody, but exactly. She uses enough examples that are different from her and what she does on a day-to-day basis that I really appreciated that. So that's what made me think this book would be valuable to a variety of people. So whether you're a consultant or a speaker, a professor, or in sales, or you're in manufacturing or in marketing, big company, small company, there's definitely things that you can learn from her and her examples in here.
I think so many of the themes too, we like to apply them or think of them in terms of the professional application, but they're all equally applicable personally, whether you're leading your family or whether you have a partner, with or without children. I mean, they're applicable at that level as well. I mean, granted, I think most of what we apply and the lessons that we talk about are professional in nature, but I find tremendous amount of crossover between both the professional and the personal columns.
Yeah, right on.
So, I think that's a wrap on this one, on the long game. I hope everybody either has read it or takes the time, because obviously we found value in it. So we're putting titles out in advance, and, as I said, Kelly and I speak quite a bit during the month, and we go back and forth on things we've found, things we've read. I read Liz Wiseman's Multipliers, and good book, and then a follow-on book this year. It was called The Impact Players, and that's the one that I'm going to recommend for February. Really like that one. I'm about halfway through it. And again, it really speaks to the person. I think Multipliers is going to be one of those when we get into leading teams and leading companies, where we'll go back to Multipliers. But right now, as Kelly pointed out in the beginning, we're focused on self. And I think Multipliers really speaks to the individual and the self, which is why I think that's the one that we'll go for in February. So
no, not Multipliers, Impact Players.
Impact Players. That's right. Yeah. Impact Players. So I think everybody knows I keep this reading list, and I sent that to Kelly. I think she'll post that, but I've got my top 10. The funny part about it is, as I read books, she'd say, well, does that top 10 fluid? Does it change? And I always look at it, and I look at every book, and I say, well, if I just read The Long Game and it's going to make the top 10 list, what one am I going to knock off, or what one am I going to bump down? And I've got a top 10 list, and then I've kind of got runners up, which is another 10, and then I've got kind of the rest of the pack or the rest of the field right now. So Kelly's going to post that. Everybody can certainly have at it, and several of the kind of the stalwarts or the legacy titles are in there. The next broadcast is February 24th. That's a Thursday. We're going to move from 11 to 4. 11's kind of middle of the business day. If you're in sales, you know about prime calling time. And so we wanted to make this a little more accessible, both for me as well as for our audience. So rather than taking kind of the heart out of the day, and obviously you can go back and view these things historically, because the links are live and the broadcast stays up there. But so Thursday, February 24th at 4 p.m. will be the next one. And, we'll look forward to connecting again next month with everybody. The last thing I wanted to share is, by no means do we have the exhaustive list of great content. Each one of you is probably reading and doing research and cross-referencing other offers. If you come across one and you say, hey, this thing really hit a note with me, it really struck a chord, and you'd like us to consider adding that, by all means, that's how I expand my library, my repertoire, is by referrals and recommendations. So don't be shy about dropping us titles. You can hit Kelly on her LinkedIn. You can hit me on mine. But I'm always open to looking for new content and new material.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, we would love to hear from everybody about your favorite books too, and any recommendations, especially as new ones come out. If you're reading those, we'd appreciate that and would welcome that. So we'll post this video. We'll post the handout from today. And the handout has the link to the book, the link to Dory's site. And there's also on Dory's site is a strategic thinking assessment, and it's free. So you can take that assessment that ties into the long game. And if you're being strategic about how you're positioning yourself in your company for the long game. So, and then I'll also post the book list and a link to the one from Liz Wiseman for February. So thank you so much, Bret. We could go on and on all day, but okay, we're at 32 minutes, I think. So where does it say on here somewhere? But
31:23, we just passed the mark. So I think we hit it, and kind of condensed the book down to its key components and the best parts of it, and hopefully our audience got value in that. But like, again, we really, really appreciate anybody's feedback of what's working, what's resonating, what notes we're hitting that really ring home for everybody. And, obviously we can continue to improve and grow and develop. I'm not a professional podcaster. I don't think Kelly is either, although I've done more and more of these just because I think they're a heck of a lot of fun and I'm expanding my network. But, anything that you can do that builds us up and gives us feedback and gives us direction on how to improve, I'm certainly open to that.
Yeah, right on. So
Kelly, you want to wrap us up and send us off into the work world?
Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. So next we'll have that book, and then that's the 4th Thursday. We also have Culture Matters is coming up on the 2nd Friday. And then I'm going to start doing other types of interviews each month as well. So watch all the updates on LinkedIn for all of those things, and keep growing and developing and being extraordinary leaders. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Bret.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you soon.